Hey, somebody needs to dig deeper. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You're listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, The Professional Noticer is sponsored by Books for Veterans. The Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C. has asked for 10,000 Andy Andrews books. I'm personally donating as many as I can, but to reach 10,000, I need your help. What we're able to do to make that easier for you is for every $12 donation you make, a hardback book will be sent to the Veterans Administration for veterans, their families, and for the employees of the VA. That $12 will cover the cost of the book, the shipping and handling, or you can purchase one of these awesome Books for Veterans t-shirts, and your purchase will include a book sent to the VA in your name. So whether you can make this a personal gift or a corporate donation, just go to andyandrews.com/veterans. This can be added to a website purchase, done as an individual entry, or in conjunction with a Books for Veterans t-shirt. Thank you very much for your support. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. If we can have somebody that has observations and answers, that's just the best. And we have it today. We have it. If you're ever in a bookstore and you see a book by Alex Kershaw, just buy it. Okay, he's got 12 of them. I think only 12. I'm sure there's another one coming out soon. I've read them all, and this guy is one of my favorite authors. He was educated at Oxford University. He's widely acclaimed, prize-winning New York Times best-selling author, and The Longest Winter, the Bedford Boys. I love the Bedford Boys. The First Wave, the Liberator, and recently Against All Odds. His book, The Liberator, is now a 4-part series with Netflix, and his book, Blood and Champagne, is currently being adapted into a TV series. Alex is famous for historical fiction. Would that be correct? I mean,
I would rather you said historical nonfiction.
Okay, historical nonfiction. I am confused. Anyway, this is Alex Kershaw. Alex, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks.
And I probably get confused on that myself because your books read like a novel, and they are nonfiction, but they read like a novel. And so I just love what you do.
That's very generous of you. Thanks. That's very nice of you.
So what was your first book?
My first book was a really bad biography of Jack London. I was only in my late 20s. I went to San Francisco. You can tell I'm a limey. So I left London in 1994, and I had my girlfriend, who then became my ex-wife. A long story, but anyway, I met her in London, and she wanted to go back to the US. She's from Minnesota, and we decided to go to San Francisco, but I couldn't work legally in the US because I'm British, so I had to have a reason why I could get a work visa. So I thought, okay, why don't I try writing a book? And Jack London grew up in Oakland and spent most of his life in the Bay Area. So I tried to write a biography of him, which was kind of fun because I went to a lot of the places where he lived around the Bay Area. I went to the ruins of Wolf House. He had that really beautiful estate up in Sonoma County.
Right.
That was my first outing, long time ago now.
Another one of my favorite authors is Bernard Cornwell.
Oh yeah.
And he had the same experience you did. Fell in love with a girl from America, moved to America, couldn't get a green card, said, I've always wanted to write. And here he is, and here you are. So
yeah, I finally got my green card after I got married, obviously, and I got married in the wedding chapel at the Las Vegas at the Treasure Island Hotel. So
Really, did Elvis did
uh,
Elvis do your service?
actually, I only had needed one eyewitness, which was the actual priest. Amazingly, so it was a really cheap wedding, and I think my wedding ring was like $150 or something. And I got to choose for the service. I got to choose two songs, and I can only remember one, which was "Viva Las Vegas." So I don't know whether I don't know whether I walked up the aisle to that or whether I walked out to that. I'm not sure.
Well, that's a great memory, great story.
Yeah.
So when did you decide that history was your deal? I mean, you're kind of delving in it with Jack London.
Yeah, no, I've always been really obsessed, I guess is the right word, or really into history from when I was very young. I loved reading history. I loved, my dad was very, he liked to go. I remember going to visit Hadrian's Wall. That's the Roman wall between Scotland and England when I was a kid. And growing up in Britain in the 70s, you couldn't escape history, especially World War II, which is what I ended up
Sure.
writing mostly about. So yeah, I always loved history. I always think that history, the part of that word is story. So I think true stories from the past have always been, absolutely mesmerizing to me often.
How did you find? How did you come across the Bedford Boys? Just outline that story very quickly. But I'm curious as to how you found that.
That's a great question. It's back in the late 90s. I was writing a biography of Robert Capa, and you may know him from the really famous images of D-Day, June 6th, 1944.
Right.
Um, those are the most dramatic, the most celebrated pictures of Americans landing on D-Day anyway on Omaha Beach. He was a photographer for Life magazine, and I wrote a biography of him. So I thought, I might as well go to the place, or rather, I should go to the place where he had his glory hour. I think it was an hour and a half actually that he spent on Omaha Beach with the big red one. And I was walking along Omaha Beach in I think 1999 with my best friend, and it's about 5.5 miles long, and I got to the very western end of Omaha Beach, and there is a National Guard memorial there. And I thought to myself, what is a National Guard memorial doing on Omaha Beach? And I discovered that one of the divisions that landed there were two. There was the big red one, the first ID, and then the other was the 29th Infantry Division, and that was a National Guard division. And I thought to myself, I didn't know much about American divisions at that point, but I certainly thought, well, this is one of the most important, if not the most critical landing of the 20th century, D-Day, and this was the most difficult beach, and it turned out to be the most lethal beach. I'm like, what's a bunch of weekend warriors? What are a bunch of kids from rural Virginia, etc., doing in this, really important invasion? Why wasn't it Rangers? Why weren't these guys, elite troops, etc.? And so when I was there, I started thinking about that, and I came back to the US and I did a bit of research, and I discovered that there had been a group of National Guard. There was a unit called Company A from Bedford, Virginia, that had been part of the invasion, and in fact the first wave. And of A company on D-Day, full strength would have been around 200 men. 34 guys from this community. The town's around 3,000. It hasn't got much bigger. So you have 19 of them were killed in the first wave from a community of 3,000 plus the Bedford County around, which was mostly, it's a very rural community.
Right.
So that was the highest per capita loss of any Allied town on D-Day. And that's why today the National D-Day Memorial is in Bedford, Virginia. And I thought to myself, well, why hasn't anybody told this story? It's a really amazing story of sacrifice. And I decided to do it in a new way. Well, no one had written about the Bedford Boys in a book before. And in fact, my editor was the one that came up with the title, The Bedford Boys, because my original title wasn't very good. So I decided to tell the story of one small American community that went to war and made this ultimate sacrifice, and to do so from two points of view. One, the soldiers who fought, some of them who survived, those who died, and then also the community back home, the parents, the wives, the girlfriends, the siblings, the community back home. So you have this cutting back and forth from England, and then from D-Day, Normandy, back and forth to Bedford County, Virginia. So it's a story of a war story, but also a story of a community in World War II, which hadn't been done before. And I was blessed, I was really, really lucky to be able to write the book at the time. The book was published in 2003. There was still a lot of veterans around. A lot of people in the community could remember D-Day vividly, still felt the pain of that loss. So I was just very lucky that I caught it at the right time, that no one had thought about writing this kind of book before. And the success of the book, it wasn't a huge bestseller, but it got onto the New York Times list, meant that I could carry on writing books about World War II, which, 20 years later, 21 years later, I'm still doing.
Well, I'm going to tell you that book is fascinating, but it also, that book will never die. I mean, all your books are evergreen, because they're about a time that some of us are intensely curious about, and I guess proud of. We're proud of those people in that time, and these books that you do. I mean, I have been fascinated by everything that you do. One of the interesting things, as much as I read about World War II, you brought to light something in me. Reading your books made me think of something in a different way, and I'll tell you what it was. We grow up hearing about our military, and we hear about these people fought for their country or in service to their country, and some of them sacrificed everything. And as I've grown up and into my 40s, I always thought of that as the people who gave their lives for the country. That meant they were dead, that they died. But your books, you take these kids and take them through the action, and then you fill it out with their life and what their life was like after the war and up until the time of their passing. And it has been apparent to me that a lot of these people who lived, they also gave their lives, because, I mean, when you're 90 years old and still diving under the table when the thunder booms, and you can't sleep in a bed and you have nightmares every night. I mean, these people gave their lives too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've met several World War II veterans who, uh, had nightmares for many, many years. You know, there are guys out there that are still alive, that are in their late 90s, that are haunted by World War II, by what they endured. So yeah, it doesn't go away. I don't think any World War II veteran ever put the war behind them. I think what's amazing about that generation is that they put the war to the side and carried on. Um, Several of the characters I've written about spent an awful long time in combat, and anybody who's been in combat will tell you that it does change you permanently. That you are going to be left with scars. It's going to deeply affect you, and the longer you spend in combat, the more it will affect you. So I think it's really remarkable that so many of the people that I have written about who endured great trauma were able to lead very productive, very, very lives that were full of service and love and compassion. And that's, to this day, is incredibly inspiring to me. When people get down, when they complain, when they moan and grumble about life, they should really think about the 18, 19-year-olds who 80 years ago today were about to invade Anzio. The average age of an American who died in World War II is about 22, 23. So if you want to feel proud of your country, if you want to really think about the meaning of life and how you should use your days, I suggest people go to the graveyard above Omaha Beach, where there are over 9,500 young Americans buried. Average age, as I said, 22. So, I'm 58 almost. I've lived a hell of a lot longer than the average guy who died in World War II. I've had a life. They didn't get a life. My life in freedom, mostly prosperity, as a European, and the last 30 years in the US has been bought by their sacrifice. And so long as I'm still breathing, I'm going to honor that sacrifice and that heroism and that gift, that most beautiful of all gifts that you can receive, which is for someone else to lay down their life so that you can grow up in freedom.
Before I get to what is obviously your passion, I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you. I don't know if you've been asked these two questions before, but I always said if I was ever able to talk to Alex Kershaw, I was going to, because I consider you the guy living who knows more about the context of World War II than anybody else. And so these next two questions may seem kind of odd, but I've always been curious as I was reading about them. To be a great general in wartime, do you have to be a little crazy?
I think it helps, definitely. I think that I've just actually finished a book called Patton's Prayer, which is
I was thinking about Patton.
yeah. Well, he's a perfect example. I definitely think it helps that it depends on what you mean by crazy. I think most people today, looking back and examining the life of, and certainly the wartime career of George Patton, would say that he was very, very colorful. This is a guy that believed in reincarnation, extremely religious, actually asked his chief chaplain in the Third Army to devise a prayer for good weather in December of 1944, and then had 250,000 prayer cards distributed to his Third Army, and really believed that prayer was answered when the weather cleared on the 23rd of December 1944, and that led to our victory in the Battle of the Bulge. He was very outspoken, very controversial. A lot of the things he said would have got him fired in a heartbeat today. He wouldn't be allowed to be an army commander, certainly wouldn't be allowed to be in control of 450,000 Americans, which Patton was by the end of the war. But when national survival is on the line and you know how to win, and you do so with great skill and determination and stamina, you become very valuable. And Patton was very valuable. He's my favorite American World War II Army commander. I'd have to say general. I've got lots, but he would top the list because I think he was extremely aggressive. And he realized very clearly that war is about winning. You don't want to lose a war. And to win a war, you have to destroy the enemy. And you have to get guys G'd up and motivated to do that. And he did that. A lot of people didn't like serving under Patton in World War II because he was very strict. They always had to wear their helmets. Officers always had to wear ties, notoriously strict. But when they came back after the war and they looked back on their service, they were extremely proud to have served under Patton.
Like the Bear Bryant of the battlefield.
Oh yeah, no, he was, and he was, he was a genius in terms of planning, in terms of if you want to, there isn't a better example of how to lead in crisis and conflict than George Patton. He was the CEO of war, ultimate American CEO of war. So I'm a big fan, really big fan.
Part of the reason I asked that question is I read a quote by one of Custer's superiors in the Civil War, and he said that George Custer was the only cavalry commander that was as effective after he was married as he was before he was married. Which, you kind of see, okay, because before you're married, it's like you're just running into it, but now you're going, oh, I got a wife, I got kids. But he was crazy enough to just be, because the cavalry, I mean, that's you're charging with 200 people, making them think you're 2,000 people,
Yep.
right into the teeth of it. But I thought that was a curious quote.
Well, one of the notable, I mean, Patton was married throughout Second World War to Beatrice, and one of the notable things about Patton is that he was at the front as often as possible. It was very unusual for an army commander, Third Army commander, over, some 250,000 guys under his command, for him to be in a Jeep at the front, checking out the front lines, egging his men on, pushing them toward victory. But he was out in a Jeep in terrible weather in the winter of 1944, 45. He's got his famous revolver strapped to his waist and another one outside his parka in a Jeep in a snowstorm, swearing at guys, getting out, pushing trucks, asking them what the holdup is. He led from the front. He absolutely. If you look at the diary, Patton's diary, and he wrote to his wife almost every day, and not just how are you, I love you, but actually quite 2 or 3 paragraphs sometimes every day, and kept a very detailed diary. And he was day after day for week after week, in 1944, 45, he was out there visiting his men near or at the front lines. So
Yeah.
that was a guy that was not affected by the fact that he was married. It didn't matter.
Right.
He was saying,
well, there's Custer and Patton then.
Yeah, he believed that he'd been put on earth to be a great warlord, and that was his destiny, and he would have been very happy to die in battle. In fact, right at the end of his life, he regretted not having died in battle. So he was the ultimate American warrior.
Well, so that leads to the next question. When you say he was the ultimate warlord, he was out fighting. He believed he was born to do this, didn't mind the thought of dying in battle. Okay, my next question is, when you look at Medal of Honor winners, some of them, and I guess I'm specifically thinking of Audie Murphy right now. I don't, I read that Audie Murphy, he told somebody, get up out of the foxhole. The guy says, I'm scared. And he said, well, get up. He said, you won't be scared if you just figure you're already dead. He said, I'm already dead. And so get up and fight. You're already dead too, so fight. But you read some of the stuff that he did, he ended up the most decorated American soldier in history. And he was this little bitty guy. And some of the stuff, like jumping onto a burning tank and using the machine gun after everybody else has gotten out of there, and they're shooting at him and the tank's burning and he's taking down scores of Germans and doesn't get a scratch. I mean, how do you explain people like that?
That's a great question. I mean, if I could answer that question, I think I'd be extremely rich. Well, what is the secret sauce what's the secret sauce that Audie Murphy had? It's a very, I don't think you can ever answer that question, but there's a lot of things about Audie Murphy that prepared him for combat. And I think you have to say that he's a one-off. He's an outlier. He's a complete outlier. He's a Patton figure in the sense that it was just a one-off. I haven't come across any better example of a leader stroke predator, if you like, from World War II. He was extremely aggressive, a brilliant shot. He's small. He could run very fast, low to the ground, and fire at the same time, literally from the hip. He had a great instinct for battle. He could scan a landscape and work out where the enemy were or could be. Is extremely brave in the sense that he wasn't afraid to take action. And I think this is the key. He knew that by doing something, he stood a better chance of getting through a battle or an escapade. That movement was really important, and that if he didn't do the job, others could get killed. So if you look at the medals that he received, and Audie Murphy received every medal that you could receive for heroism. All the time, every single medal was a case of him basically trying to save other guys' lives. So, in the case of the Medal of Honor, it was in Holtzfear in early 1945. His company, B Company, were attacked by the Germans, and he knew that unless he repelled the Germans, then a lot of guys in his company would be killed. So who gets the job? Who's going to do it? And he knows that he's going to do it best. He's the most qualified, the most experienced. He wants to do it, so he steps up and does it. So it wasn't as if he chose, in a sense, to do that. He knew that he had to do it.
Right.
The equation was very simple. I act, and we win, and I save lives, or I don't act, we lose, and a lot of my buddies die. And that was
Wow.
over and over the case for Audie Murphy. And in fact, if you look at the 472 Americans who received the Medal of Honor for actions in World War II, most of the time they are acting to save others. So
Right.
there's a wonderful, beautiful altruism there. They're not out for glory. They're not out to win a medal or earn a medal. The Medal of Honor is earned, not won. Over and over again, you'll see that they were actually trying to achieve something which would save others' lives. So, when you're asked to attack a tank, when you're asked to take out a pillbox, you have to do that if you want to win. If you want to end World War II, you've got to go from where we started, which was North Africa, all the way to, they thought, Berlin, ended up being central Germany. In all, it was way over 2,000 miles. You're not doing that by retreating. You're doing that by getting up often every day out of a foxhole and attacking the enemy, destroying the enemy, and moving forward. So it takes certain individuals to do that consistently and achieve the objective. Very few men in war do that. Most people are just trying to stay alive. So
Right.
I think one of the reasons why I became fascinated by Audie Murphy and the Medal of Honor recipients of World War II is that they are the perfect example. That group is a fantastic example of what it really took to win in World War II, which is an enormous amount of courage, enterprise, and selflessness.
That is awesome. And you have taken your fame and your skills, and you are working hard with the Friends of the National World War II Memorial. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm the resident historian for Friends. It's a non-profit group set up in 2007. So the World War II Memorial, what we do is we hold the commemorations. We have a huge amount of educational outreach, and our objective is to make sure that the greatest generation is not forgotten. and more importantly, that we learn lessons from that generation, and that young Americans today can learn those lessons. So I spend a lot of time in high schools, um, various other places. But the thing that I'm most driven by is the mission that we have above all, which is to make young Americans feel proud of their country. I've been into many high schools where I've asked the question, can you point to a chapter in your history that you're proud of? And very few people have even put their hand up to try and answer the question. And I think only in one or two occasions has anybody, out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of high school students, and these are high school students from prosperous backgrounds in public schools in inner cities, a real diversity of Americans I've been talking to. Only in one or two cases have they even mentioned World War II. So I think that World War II is the most inspiring chapter in American history. It's
I
the
do
one
too.
chapter, it's the one chapter that every single American can feel proud of and should feel proud of. So if you can't feel proud as an American of what was achieved in World War II, I don't know what the hell you can feel proud of. Is there anything that comes close? If you look at opinion polls, if you look at the way that America was viewed in 1945 at the end of World War II, it's never been more respected by people around the globe. It had enormous moral authority. It had achieved a miracle. It had defeated Imperial Japan. It had defeated barbarism, real barbarism in the Pacific, 3,000 or 4,000 and more miles away from home, and in Europe, two battlefronts where two immense evils were defeated in the time of a presidency in 4 years by a country that didn't want to go to war, that was not, that was not prepared to go to war. It's an astonishing achievement. Us Europeans who appreciate our history will forever be thankful. I am, and every American should be thankful that they live today in a democracy. And in fact, I believe that the free world, those only 34 countries are democracies on this planet out of more than 200 countries. America still is the only essential nation on this planet. If you want to solve any global crisis, any problem, America has to take the lead still. Whether it likes to or not, it's still the only essential nation on this planet. You take a US out of the global picture when it comes to whatever it might be in terms of climate change, whatever issue it happens to be, global security. When the US is absent, chaos follows, disorder follows. So that all traces back, I believe, to America's preeminent role in world affairs, which begins in 1941 when America enters the Second World War. And by 1945, America is, one of two global superpowers. And today is the only massive democracy with real influence and power that we need to celebrate. So I think that one of the things that needs to be stressed is that, Churchill said that if you don't know your past, then you don't know who you are, and you certainly can't find your way into the future. That you have to know where you come from. You have to know who you are as Americans, as a nation, to have confidence, to know what's unique about your nation, to know what you should feel proud of, and to inspire you to serve others and to protect and defend your nation. You need to know where you come from. You need to know your past. And if you don't know about World War II, then you don't know about the best part of American history. And that's when I say the best part of American history, I mean the best part of American history in terms of the way that the rest of the world looks at the US, not just America.
The character of
Yeah,
America.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I find that when I go into high schools with friends, we're a non-profit. The government doesn't pay for us to do this. When I go into high schools, when I talk about these things, and I find that really, what's wonderful is that a lot of young Americans, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they feel inspired by World War II. They listen to these stories and they think, wow, that's amazing. I always stress that it wasn't a bunch of 99-year-olds who won World War II. I point to kids in the high school class and I say, guess who won World War II? It was you. You know,
Yeah.
18, 19-year-olds won this war. And if Pearl Harbor happened tomorrow, you'd be called up and you'd have to face the same challenges. And you, like all human beings, you're capable of amazing things. And we would hope that you would step up and live up to the greatest generation. And I'm sure they will. But my point is that when I leave the high school, we leave behind surveys, and a lot of kids say that for the first time they feel genuinely proud to be American. And I'm like, this is crazy. Why does it take a Limey to go into an American high school and make these kids care about their country and where they come from and feel proud to be from this great nation? You know, so it's a great mission. I really enjoy doing it. I use stories from my books to do that, and I think it's what so many of the men and women who I've written about would want me to be doing. They would like people to carry on their stories and but to continue to maintain their legacy, to preserve their legacy by making sure young Americans understand and remember. Because I'm always, when I talk to people in their 60s, people, even 50s, but older generations get it. You know, their parents served in World War II. They know how important a deal this is. A lot of them, but we have to make sure that it isn't that it's the younger generations that
Yeah.
get to appreciate and understand and learn from these wonderful examples. Because there aren't any better, I don't think. You
Right.
know, there aren't better examples of service and selflessness and sacrifice and fidelity and honor and courage and humility. These are great, great examples.
How can we help you, Alex?
Well, you can help me by sending your listeners to the Friends of the National World War II Memorial website. They can donate if they like. They can join it. We have a monthly virtual conference every third Saturday morning where we have veterans and experts, and we do a lot of events. We go on trips to Europe, battlefield trips. We do a lot of things. So if you visit our website and all the support you can give.
Okay. Well, we
uh,
will
Great.
we will put everything in the show notes about how to reach you, how to
Cool.
reach that website. And I just a couple more questions here, just taking a little right turn here. What is your process as a writer? Because
Well,
you are not only prolific, you don't miss. Your books are all great.
well,
And
I've had a few misses, but I, uh, I spent a lot of time trying to come up with a new idea because World War II's been written about so much. So I try to come up with a new idea or a new angle, a way
right,
of approaching it that's different. So, obviously, a lot of books have been written about D-Day. So when I wrote the Bedford Boys, it was a new angle, it was a new take on really often told story.
right.
So a lot of it comes down to research and reading, trying to think of a new way of approaching a subject, and then producing a really detailed outline. I'm doing that right now for a book I'm trying to put together. So you start off with the kind of a lot of reading, you try and make connections, you try and think of a new way of approaching a subject that people are interested in, and you go from there. So it takes a long, long time.
And if you had to give, knowing the publishing climate today, if you had to give a young writer just a heads up, couple of things that, hey, let me just tell you this as you're getting going, what would you say?
Do you want my honest answer?
Yeah.
uh, uh, unless you're prepared to go through an awful lot of rejection endure a lot of stress and you got a hard skin and you're tough, don't bother. Don't do it.
I hear you.
It's like it's you better really, really want to do it. You better really, really want to do it. And if you're going to start off by, if you're going to start, being a journalist is a really good thing to do, because you learn skills, you learn a nose for a story, you get into various work habits. I started off as a journalist, so I don't know. I mean, would I do it again, knowing what happened with me? I think I've been blessed and very lucky, but had I chosen to do something else, I don't know. You can't answer that question because all I wanted to do was be a writer. I wanted to be my great passion in my 20s and 30s was being a journalist, so
Right.
I couldn't think of anything else I wanted to do. I couldn't think of anything that was more fun, maybe being a rock star or, a great soccer player. I say, or rather,
Well, dude, in my life, you are a rock star. I'm just telling you. I was talking to a friend right before we connected, and he was telling me that his daughter that had written a book, and he said the publisher turned it down. And so she doesn't know where she's going to go now and what she's going to do. And I said, well, how about another publisher?
Yeah.
And he said, do you just keep after it like that? And I said, buddy, do you know, I've written some books, and I've got one book that has sold more than any other. And I said, buddy, do you know how many times The Traveler's Gift was turned down? And he said, no. I said, 51. 51 publishers said that what I had written was not worth putting on paper.
Well, perseverance is 99% of it,
It is.
And as Hemingway said, writing is a lonely life, and most of it is about ASS on seat time. You just have to put in the hour. He's not just sitting there, waiting for inspiration. Jack London famously said you have to light out after inspiration with a club. You have to really focus. So, yeah.
I think you can luck into one book, but I think after that, it's discipline.
Yeah.
It's because, people ask me sometimes, they say, you must love to write. And I'm like, nah, not really. I love having written, but every time I'm in front of the computer, there's only 50 things I can think of I'd rather be doing. But I love being an author. I love signing books. I love giving books away. I love making my living that way. I love talking about books. But do I like to write?
I don't know. I think I'd say, you can get in the flow, one of those things about life where if you feel like you're in the flow, that's what will bring you back,
Right.
I don't think you're going to get up every day and do something as difficult as make a living as a self-employed writer unless there's something about that process. There's something about being lost in that process that is either cathartic or fun or, feeding some kind of need in some way. I don't know.
Well, buddy, you have provided many hours of thought and entertainment for me too. But you've taught me a lot, and I can only tell my audience, just any of them, just go to Alex Kershaw and get any of them because they're all great. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's been great. Thanks a lot. It's been you've been very, very nice. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome back anytime. I'd love to keep up with you, and anything that I can ever do or that we can do to help, all you got to do is say the word.
Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, And to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme, written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Claw sharpeners for the cast and crew, provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration, provided by Vintage Summer Camps Incorporated. Do you long for the free and unfettered days of childhood? Do you wish your children could experience just a bit of the childhood you had? Enroll them now in your nearest Vintage Summer Camp. Franchises are now available in 42 states. At one of our many Vintage Summer Camps, your child will be required to exist for 2 whole weeks without electronics. Each camper will then enjoy summer camp just like you did as a child. Mountain bike rides with no helmets, zip lines with no nets, skateboarding without pads, and swims in the lake with no boundaries, no life jackets, or no swimming lessons. And best of all, no supervision. Just be back in your cabin when it gets dark. Then, after a balanced meal of hot dogs and marshmallows, your child will be free to sneak out of their cabin to find members of the opposite sex until daylight. All Vintage Summer Camp locations provide dial telephones without caller ID. Prank calls are encouraged. For those children with destructive tendencies, Vintage Summer Camps provides each camper with an unlimited supply of eggs, toilet paper, water balloons, and cherry bombs. Make reservations now. This is camp like you remember for your kids. Today, that's Vintage Summer Camps Incorporated.